Has it ever happened to you that you get up in the morning and you have these plans for the day, and then the day passes by, and in the evening you're like, wait, what did I do today? And you realize that you haven't done like a half of what you wanted to do. Okay, and of course it happened to me many times, too many times than I would like. And so today I would like to talk about time management. But here's the thing, I am not an expert on time management, but I am an expert on me. I'm really bad at organizing myself, and I'm really bad at things that make me productive, okay? Because I have like mild ADHD, and so for me it's very hard to stay on track. So whatever I find that works for me most likely will work for you, okay? So now let's talk about the obvious problems like the ADHD, okay? So I believe that many of us, although we might not have full-blown ADD, ADHD and stuff like that, we are still living in the environment that actively encourages that kind of thinking and that kind of behavior. For example, do you know that if you have your phone out during a meeting, there was actual research done, and they found that just by having your phone, the efficiency of the meeting was going down. So you don't even check your phone or anything, but just the phone being there in front of you would decrease your productivity. So this is the kind of environment that we live in. And I'm sure you've heard of monk mode. So monk mode is exactly when you remove yourself from this environment and you try to, I don't know, like basically by removing yourself, you are trying to avoid distractions. So let's talk about time management and the simplest techniques that I found that worked for me. So number one, the most important, is you need to identify the type of the activities that you are engaging in. So it means that basically you need to be mindful of what you are doing at this moment. Okay, and so I find that there are about 5 different types of activities. There are probably more, but so far I've identified 5, and I managed to remember 5. Okay, so number 1 is work, or what you can call grinding. This is basically what has to be done just to maintain your current level of existence. Okay. Next is studying or learning. Okay, it's kind of obvious, right? Next, building. And building is also work, but this is the kind of activity that you do once, that does not scale well, and that will improve your life. So for example, let's say you are an author, okay, or you want to be an author, or you just want to leave some kind of legacy. So building your website would be the build activity. Then writing, let's say, articles or making podcasts like I'm doing now, that's mostly grinding, because you have to do this just to maintain your website, okay? You can't just say, okay, I will do it once and then I will just leave it. No, you have to keep doing it. Another option would be, for example, I have a business, okay? And so in my case, it's a school. And teaching lessons would be the grind, okay? Because without teaching it doesn't work. I will lose my quality of life. I will lose my business. But at the same time, for example, recording a video lesson is the build section of that, okay? So you have to make sure that you understand the difference. Because if you understand the difference, then you know, okay, now I'm grinding, then I'm gonna build. Or now I'm building, then I'm gonna grind. Usually the grinding is the activity that requires less effort, less mental effort, okay? And building usually requires more effort, a conscious effort, because this is a one-time activity. You can get used to the grinding part, but you can't really get used to the building part, okay? Next is rest. So we have working, studying, building, and then rest, okay? And here is the important point, okay? I will mention one more, entertainment. So the last 2 points are rest and entertainment. Now, why do I make them separate? It's because I don't believe entertainment is rest. This is a critical point. I believe that we develop this misconception when we are kids, okay? And when we are kids, we get tired physically, right? So let's say we go outside, we play games, I don't know, play ball with friends. Then we are like, oh my God, I can't do this. Yesterday I was talking to my student and he looked really sleepy. He was barely staying awake for the lesson. And I asked, what's wrong? And he's like, oh, I'm sleepy. I'm like, why are you sleepy? And it turns out that he had played handball at his school. So of course he was tired. So here's my point. When we are kids, we get tired physically, and then to recover physically, we can engage in entertainment. Let's say we can watch TV, we can watch some video, we can play games. And it works because our body is given time to recover, yeah? But when we become adults, we don't engage in sports so much. So what we do, at least in my case, that's what I saw in myself. Let's say I work or build, yeah? And then I engage in entertainment. So I'm thinking, okay, my work is done, or let's take a break, let's rest. And then I watch YouTube videos. I'm like, and then what I found is that I don't feel rested at all. I feel even more tired than I was when I finished working. And then, of course, I can't do the next section of my work because I'm still tired. And so this is the distinction I was forced to make. Rest is usually something boring, something that doesn't engage any of your, fun-seeking brain sections, okay? So it's like you don't get excited when you're resting. Rest is something boring, like sleeping is a boring thing. Napping, boring thing. Meditation probably is boring too, yeah? So if you are working let's say, using your head, let's say you're writing or, I don't know, having meetings, talking to people, whatever, then your rest could be physical activity without any mental input. So for me, this is the critical point. No mental input or very low mental input, okay? That's rest for me. Like reading a book, it's kind of on the edge of studying and rest. So yeah, that's my most important point, is basically you need to know what you're doing right now. Either you're working, studying, building, resting, or entertaining yourself. And when you know that, then you can focus on each of these activities. So let's say you studied hard, then you're tired, you're like, okay, what should I do now? If I'm tired, I should rest, not entertain myself. And then, if you know that you should be resting, then you know, okay, I will cut out all the information, I cut out all the stimuli from my brain, from my eyes, for example, and then you basically rest. And what you will find, and what I found, is that if you actually do this, if you rest, really rest, then it does take like 10 minutes of rest, so then you can continue your working or grinding or whatever, building, okay? Next, my second simplest form of time management is to-do lists. Now, as I mentioned, the main goal of time management is to focus you, okay? So when you have a to-do list, and again, this is as old as the world, probably the people like with clay tablets, they had to-do lists on their clay tablets, okay? So to-do lists do two things for me. Number one, they remove your multitasking. How do they do that? Number one, they take away the do or decide activity. So basically, you separate deciding what you will do from the actual doing of the thing. Because these two are different processes in the mind. So you have to like think about the long-term goals and future and everything. Then you decide what needs to be done. But then once you have it on the paper, you're just do it. And also it helps with procrastination. In my case, what I found is I usually procrastinate on things that are complex. So for example, I say, okay, I need to file my taxes. Oh, that's a really complex activity. I need to find the software to do that. I need to connect the special device that will send the information to card reader basically. So using the card reader, you can send your tax information digitally. Okay, and of course you have to like fill out the forms and you need to calculate your expenses. And so basically there are so many steps that if I just write down, file your taxes on a paper, it doesn't mean anything. Where do I start? What is the first step? And so what I found is that when you can break down your steps into smaller steps, right? So you have this big task, then you break it down into smaller steps. Then what happens is the procrastination just goes away. Because at some point, when you are writing your steps, you'll be like, oh my God, like I would just rather do it right now than write it. And so then the effort of doing things becomes less than the effort of writing things, like writing your to-do list. And so this is what kills my procrastination, for example. Just writing such a detailed to-do list that you're just, I will just do it. I don't want to write them anymore. Okay, and next one is another way how to-do lists help is because when you look at things on your to-do list and you choose the one thing that you will do now, you focus on that one thing. You don't think about many things if you have a good to-do list, yeah? You don't focus on many things, you just focus on one thing. And as you focus, you are able to perform this action better. And so that's two ways how to-do lists work. Again, it's so simple, and of course you know it, but this is just a friendly reminder to actually do it, okay? Next is, let's take this to-do list, let's kick it up a notch, okay? I found that using Google Calendars or any other app is also good, and it's even better than to-do lists. Why? Because to use a to-do list, you have to have it somewhere, okay? Apps, in my case, don't work at all. For me, the best way to use a to-do list is to have like 1 or maximum 2-day to-do list. So let's say today, I will write a list, and it's for today and maybe for tomorrow. No more than that. Because I don't know why, it just doesn't work for me. I never use apps for to-do lists. So I have apps, I've tried using them, but it's just as long as this list not in front of your eyes, you will forget. And so in my case, I forget. It's like ADHD saying that out of sight, out of mind. Well, it's exactly like that. So the to-do list has to be in front of your eyes all the time. Then it works. That's why I don't use apps. But what I started using is Google Calendar, or I don't know, Apple version of that. So basically, you have something that you need to do, right? But you don't need to do it, let's say, today. You need to do it in 2 days. Or you need to do it tomorrow in the morning, yeah? And so in that case, I just use reminders in Google Calendar. And it works really, really well because you're like, okay, I have nothing to do. And then you look at your phone and you're like, oh, right, I was supposed to do that thing. And then you start doing that thing. And what's best about this is that you can set the time, right? So it's not just a reminder. It's like that at this time, let's say next day or in 3 days, you will have some free time in the morning, for example, okay, or afternoon, doesn't matter. And so because you know that you will be able to do something, and then you assign yourself that task for that time slot. And so this, to me, this is like magic. It's like talking to myself from the future, like time travel, because you're thinking about what to do, and then you look at your phone and, oh, I know what to do. It's exactly like the best thing to do right now. And so, but you thought about it before, and it's exactly like sending a message to yourself in the future. Okay? Next one. One more point that helps me is to have a rhythm or a schedule. Okay? So, for example, on Tuesdays, I always work for my business. Okay? So, let's say yesterday was Tuesday, and I was recording videos for my school, I was preparing for my lessons, I was doing everything connected with the school. Nothing about the podcast, didn't do anything, okay? But today is Wednesday, and Wednesday is my kind of online day, okay? So that's why I'm recording this podcast today, okay? And it works really well. And what I found is that most of the what's called digital creators, I really hate this word, but you have to, that's what we have. So all of these creators, they have schedules. They say on Monday I do this, on Tuesday I do this, on Wednesday, and so on. They all have their schedules. It's not like, okay, what should I do today? No, they have it. They have job, but their job is for themselves, okay? So just like you would have your job schedule, the same way you can have it for yourself in terms of time management. And you can schedule, let's say, your grinding, your studying, your building into the week. Okay, and when you do that, once you have, let's say, 2-3 weeks done already, then it's gonna be so easy. You wake up on Wednesday and you're like, boom, this is what I'm gonna do today. You don't need to think about it, and because you don't need to think about it, then you save time and stop wasting your time. Okay, and one of important points that I want to mention is, at least in my case, I think of time management as saying no. What do I mean by that? I mean that the essence of focus is saying no. It's not focusing on what you actually want to do or need to do, like, okay, I will just pay attention to this thing. No, I think it's much easier to say no to everything else. And so, as I mentioned in the beginning, right, if you know what activity you are thinking about, so let's say you're working now, let's say now I'm recording this podcast, okay? Then I will need to edit this audio, yeah? But imagine if, as I'm editing, let's say I put it in my app and then it starts processing, and then I'm like, okay, I have to wait. And then I have a choice. What am I gonna do? Is it gonna be resting? Is it gonna be entertainment? You see? So then I know what I can choose. And so because if I have this attitude of saying no, then I can say, okay, no, I'm not gonna do entertainment. If I want, I can rest. If I don't want to rest, I need to, let's say, build. Okay? And then I will start doing that. And so just by saying no, you can actually make your life much easier. Saying no, I believe, is the easiest and the fastest way to stop wasting your time. Just say no to whatever is not helping you. And this point is related to being selfish. And this is kind of a weird thing to do, because I've noticed that, let's say, people who have a lot of money, they often sound and behave in a very, how to say, well, you could say it's selfish, but it's more of a focused way. What do I mean by that? So, for example, you know that famous video of Elon Musk talking to a journalist or blogger, vlogger, it doesn't matter, and they are talking about the rockets, the SpaceX rockets, and the journalist is asking Elon Musk is describing how his rockets work, like some propulsion system, and the guy interviewing him, he's asking, but that's only for the boosters, right? And Elon Musk is like, whoa. And then he goes to redesign his rockets to incorporate the same principle in all parts of the rockets. So it's so technical, I couldn't understand what he was talking about. But my point is, he was thinking about his problem more than about anything else. And so his conversation brought this awareness, okay? And I've seen the same principle with many other people who are, well, let's say, successful in their fields. They always think about their problems first. Then they think about everything else. And usually they don't even think about anything else. So basically they are saying no to everything apart from what's really important. And in my case, this is also a principle. It's so simple. You can just ask yourself this question: is this important? And if it's not important, then just don't do it. So for example, especially on YouTube, like probably maybe you're watching this or listening to this on YouTube, and what I found is YouTube actually has a lot of unimportant information. So for example, yesterday I saw a video about a comparison of off-road vehicles. Okay, so they had these kind of Jeeps and 4x4s, all kinds of SUVs, and they were comparing them, which one is the best. Okay, and so I am interested in it, but for me it's like it doesn't connect to my life right now. So it is curious, right? I am curious about that, what is the best, but I can't apply this information. And so I just asked myself, well, is this important? And the answer was no. And so I closed the video and didn't watch it. And so this is my point. When you can think about it like that, just saying no to things that are not important, then your life will change. Now, let's do some honorable mentions. I'm sure you've heard about many of these following techniques, but I've tried them and they didn't work for me. Okay? So number one is 80-20 principle, Pareto Principle. I don't know how to use it in, let's say, time management. So it does help you when you think about like general strategy for your life, so to speak. But I couldn't find a way to deal with it in terms of, like, I couldn't find a way to use it when I'm planning my days. Like, you know what's important, what's not important. You don't need to think about it. Oh, what is going to give me 80% of... No, it's like the building and grinding, that's the definition about it. So it's building is 80% difficulty, but 20% time, and yet it can give you someday in the future, can give you maybe 80% outcome, right? But grinding is, you have to do this, it takes 80% of your time, it gives 20% of your outcome, but you have to do it. So you can't avoid doing it. So what's the point of that? You know, if you can't avoid doing this, anyway you have to do it, so it doesn't matter. So, but anyway, it's kind of just good mental exercise to prioritize. Okay, next, this is related to the Eisenhower matrix. So, you know, there is basically 4 squares and 2 columns, 2 rows. So each row is like, it's urgent or not urgent, and the columns are, it's important, not important. Okay, and so of course, if it's urgent and important, then you have to do it. If it's urgent but not important, well, then ignore it. If it's not urgent but important, you still have to do it, but you plan it. And if it's, not urgent and not important, well, then just ignore it again. Okay, so this is the point. Well, okay, if it's urgent but not important, then you delegate it. That's the key attitude. But I don't know if you are going to delegate it to anybody. You can't delegate washing dishes every day. You're like, hey honey, could you wash my dishes today? It's urgent, but it's not important for me to do, so I will ignore it. No, it's like, you're an asshole if you do that. At work, yes, it does work, but not in real life, I think. Okay, next, Pomodoro Technique. I could not make it work because for me it's very hard to stop doing things. So Pomodoro Technique. Pomodoro is what's that called? Tomato. Tomato is the shape of the timers that were sold in Italy, I think. And so that's why it's called Pomodoro Technique. You set a timer for 20 minutes, for example. You work, then you stop, you take a break for 5 minutes, and so on. And I tried it, and for me, I hated it. For me, it's much easier to work for 2 hours non-stop, and then take a break, than work 20 minutes, then 5 minutes, then 25. It just destroys your flow, at least in my case. But maybe it will work for you. I don't know. And one more approach that I heard from Tim Ferriss was, what task, so asking yourself this question, what task makes other tasks unimportant or easier? Okay, so let's say you have your to-do list, and one of these tasks makes all others either not important because you will solve some kind of problem, or it will make it easier. And again, this is very similar to 80-20, right? So let's say there will be some kind of task that will take care of other tasks, okay? So for example, can be hire an assistant who will then perform maybe many of the tasks that you need to perform that you either not good at or just it drains your energy, yeah? So again, but in my case, it's so difficult to find that. It's so abstract. I've never been able to use this technique in my life. So that's like, in hindsight, when you do something and then it helps everything else, you're like, oh wow, this was amazing. But as you are thinking, it's like, I used to have an Amazon store, and one of the easier ways to think about what products you can start selling is to think about a shoebox. So basically, this product needs to fit in a shoebox. And then you're thinking, okay, what? And of course, it has to be over $30, blah, blah, blah. So there are many kind of conditions that have to be met for your product to have a high chance of success. And so it's very hard to do. It's very hard to find that kind of product because it's so abstract. But the funny thing is that when you look back at your products that were successful, you're like, oh yeah, all of them can fit in a shoebox. But it's so hard to think about it like for the future. Very hard to find those products as you're just thinking, brainstorming ideas. Okay, so again, for me, that didn't work. What works for me is the type of activity, right? So the building. If you build something, then it might make your grinding much easier. Okay, so it's like, in my case, again, in my school, I decided to make videos, okay, lesson videos. Before, it was just kids come to my classroom, I teach them, I give them homework, okay, then they come next time. And it's just like, I found it so hard because I knew that they wouldn't study at home so much, or they wouldn't study well. And so only a few of my students would study well. But then now I record these videos, yeah? So it's building. It's not grinding, it's building. I need to do it just one time. But if I do this, then my students will be able to use the videos, and it's going to be easy for me because then they will come to my classroom already knowing what I've taught them in the video. And so then in the classroom, my grinding is going to be much, much, much easier. My work, my boring work. Okay, well, I don't mean boring as boring, but as the not building work. Okay, so that's my approach. And just classify what you're doing now, and then that's it. You will know what you're doing at the moment, and then you're like, okay, what the hell am I doing now? Oh, I'm reading news. Okay, is it important? No. Then stop it. So if you have these 5 principles of time management that I just outlined, then you will find that it's much easier to do this. So number 1 is, just let's recap, okay? Identify the activity type. Is it grinding, work, studying, or building, or rest, or entertainment, okay? Next, is it, use to-do lists, okay? Next, use calendar reminders from the to-do list. Next, use rhythmic schedule. So basically, just use a schedule, okay? Develop a schedule. And 5 is say no to distractions or unimportant things. Ask yourself, is this important? If it's not important, don't do it. If it's important, do it. Okay? And yeah, that's it from me, time management. If you have any other things to add, please do so in the comment section, and I will see you next time.